the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a team that can make a deep postseason run. A team that potentially could make its third straight AFC title game. With a lot of explosion across the board, offensively, defensively, there's a lot of playmakers on this team. If you look on the offensive side of the ball, Joe Mixon, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow. You have an elite level quarterback, elite wide receivers, and a really, really good running game, and an offensive line that continues to improve year over year, which has been a main concern for this team. Today's video, we are going to be covering a Cincinnati Bengals season preview. If you're new to this channel, why are you not subscribed? This is a football channel for football fans. Make sure to hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss out on any more NFL content. Now taking a look at a flashback to 2022. This is a team that went 12-4. They were 7th in points per game. They were actually 5-4 at their bye week. Let's also not forget that at the start of the season, they were 0-2. Fought to 5-4 going into that bye week. And then you look at it to finish the season, they capped it off with 7 straight wins. They always talk about the fact that if you can end a season strong, that's when it really matters. Sure, they did not get off to the start that they were hoping for, but nevertheless, this was a team that was able to finish the season strong, jumped into the playoffs, and then eventually got to the AFC title game against the Chiefs. This was a tough matchup. Kansas City was a team that is a very, very difficult matchup on paper. You look at it from the perspective of just Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are super difficult to contain. At the end of the day, they ended up losing a close contested matchup. However, the Cincinnati Bengals felt like they let that one potentially slip away. But overall, this is a well-oiled machine. This offense is super efficient. You have a great quarterback, a good running game, and a lot of wide receivers to choose from. This offensive line, like I had stated earlier, this is an improving unit, and we will get into why it even got better in the offseason in a little bit. But this is a team in 2022 that we thought very well could be in the Super Bowl. That was not the outcome. However, they had a great year. They had a lot of ups, towards the end of the season. They had some lows at the very beginning, but this was a team that was not going to shy away from a challenge, and they corrected a lot of things. So credit to Zach Taylor, credit to the staff for keeping them on the straight and narrow of where they needed to be. Ultimately, didn't get to their end goal and result that they wanted. However, there were a lot of positives to come out of that season, a very positive record, and a team that was super dominant down the stretch. So overall, that was the true flashback to 2022 of your Cincinnati Bengals. Now jumping into it here, what can we expect? This is a team that added a lot of interesting players in the offseason. To me, Orlando Brown was the biggest get. Orlando Brown moves the needle tremendously at the tackle position. An offensive unit that was obviously allowing quite a few pressures. However, they've made some changes, and Orlando Brown at the tackle spot is important. This is a seismic move for the team. He's a Pro Bowl level tackle, and obviously they paid him a lot of money to step in and be an effective player on this offensive line, to be a leader for this team, all of which are going to culminate into hopefully a very, very successful season, in my opinion. Orlando Brown is the player that you have to watch. You have to look at how he's going to impact some of the people around him, and I'm super optimistic here about his addition and his impact on the team. Following that up is Sidney Jones. Sidney Jones is a player that's bounced around the league a little bit. Obviously was with Philly, ends up going to Jacksonville, and in Jacksonville he had a nice little stint. So Sidney Jones is kind of an interesting player in totality. I just think that, he's going to be a nice depth piece for this team, as well as Cody Ford. Cody Ford is a guy that I think is going to provide some stability on that interior of that offensive line. So a lot of credit to them identifying, getting some depth pieces in free agency, not necessarily trying to take a whole bunch of swings, other than the fact that they got Orlando Brown, which was their big fish of the offseason. Irv Smith, to me, is potentially the most intriguing. I know a lot of people were negative on Irv Smith in his time in Minnesota. There were a lot of a lot of things that needed to be corrected about his game. Not too involved in the run game. From an offensive perspective, you are going to get the most value out of him as a pass catcher. Had some concentration drops, I felt, but he's super athletic and a pretty dynamic playmaker, I think, in the right system. I just don't think Minnesota was super conducive for his growth, and I think his opportunity here in Cincinnati is going to be pretty seismic. He is going to earn an opportunity at some point this season to be a big part of the game plan. So to be able to get him for where they were able to get him at, to me, this makes a lot of sense heading into the year. Irv Smith was a very, very buy low candidate, and potentially the rewards might be there. To me, I'm kind of thinking along the same player archetype as a guy like Evan Ingram. Uber athletic, had some drop issues, and very well could be an impactful player in the correct system. You think about, you think about where Irv Smith was to where he is now. It's a little more conducive for throwing to the tight end and relying on that position. They're going to use him in a multitude of ways, and I think that this is a beautiful fit for Irv Smith. And then finally, Terrell Basham, another player, is going to be a really, really nice rotational pass rusher for this team. I think when you look at the depth that they added in totality, Terrell Basham is a good scheme fit, and he's going to absolutely get after it this season for Cincinnati. So those were the key additions in free agency. And now taking a look here at some of the key draft picks, Myles Murphy in round 1. Myles Murphy was regarded as a top 5 player heading into last college football season. Now his stock took a little bit of a hit. However, this is an effective player. He is a very, very effective player. There's room for growth, and he's going to be a tremendous pass rusher at the next level. Following that up in round 2, they end up getting DJ Turner. That should say the second. My apologies on that one. That should say the second, but DJ Turner is a big-time playmaker, and I think he's going to step up in a big way for this team moving forward. In round 3, Jordan Battle, another player that was regarded as a potential first-round level guy at the start of last season, ends up falling to them in that 3rd round, and selecting Jordan Battle is a big deal. He's a guy that can play in the box. He can play that deep safety. There's a lot of things that he can do. He has good range, good instincts. I think Jordan Battle is the perfect fit at that safety spot for them. They also bring in wide receiver Charlie Jones, as well as Chase Brown. Chase Brown, I think, is going to be an underrated part of what they were able to accomplish in the draft. Chase Brown was a very, very effective running back at Illinois, tough in between the tackles, and could create some big plays for the Illini. To me, Chase Brown might see a little bit more action than people anticipate heading into the season. They're going to see what they have with him. I think he's going to get quite a few touches, potentially down the stretch of a season. So, overall, they had a very good draft. I liked what they did with pretty much every pick that they had in the draft. They did a nice job putting together guys that were going to fit the scheme and also address some positions, that needed some depth moving forward into the season. So the draft was a great time for them to make some big adjustments. Getting Myles Murphy, to me, at where they were able to get him was incredible. There's a lot that thought he was going to potentially go in the 20s, the early 20s, or even the late teens. Myles Murphy, the big edge rusher from Clemson, is going to get the job done, and to me, he is going to be a really nice compliment. Taking a look at the offensive outlook, we are going to review what they have on the depth chart. Cordell Volson is one of those players that we have to consider as a shining star from last year. This offensive line, to me, is going to be in a better spot than they were. I firmly believe that. The tight end position is one that there's some question marks. There's some unproven players. There's some guys that might get some opportunities down the stretch. To me, that's the only question I really have about the offense, is how is that going to fit? The quarterback position, Joe Burrow, but if there's a Burrow injury, I don't know how much confidence I have in Trevor Siemian. Nevertheless, this is an offense that a backup quarterback could succeed in, so I'm not super concerned there. Joe Mixon, Travion Williams, and Chase Brown are going to highlight the running backs that are here. Chris Evans as well. Wide receiver position is the most exciting one, in my opinion. Obviously, with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, this is a good unit. This is a really, really good trio, and they have some awesome depth, obviously, with Charlie Jones in company. They also did sign Trent Taylor in the offseason, which I think was an underrated signing in the actual league standpoint. To me, he's a guy that is going to help out this team in terms of actual depth, and it'll be interesting to see how they, kind of work him in. Another player that, Cincinnati ends up taking a little bit of a swing on was Jackson Kirkland. At the start of last year, a lot of people thought he was going to be a first or second round draft choice, potentially. Really athletic tackle, a guy that just needs to build up a little more strength in his upper body. But Jackson Kirkland is one of those players that could help out in terms of depth along that offensive line. Yeah, now taking a look at the defense here, there's a lot to love about this defensive unit. From the standpoint of Sam Hubbard, DJ Reed, BJ Hill, and Trey Hendrickson, a very, very formidable front four to work with a ton of depth to, go behind it. Joseph Osai, Miles Murphy, Cam Sample, Terrell Basham, a lot of edge rushers to go off of here. You look at the season that Trey Hendrickson had, led the team in sacks, forced fumbles, quarterback hits. He was a Pro Bowler. He did it all for this team. And kind of looking at the secondary as well, there's a lot of players that you can trust on the back end, in my opinion. Mike Hilton, Chidobe Awuzie. This is good. This is a really, really good team. Cam Taylor Britt, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle. Now, another player that is going to see a sizable amount of time, in my opinion, is Nick Scott. I think he very well could win that starting job. But this is a secondary that is going to have to grow a little bit. There's a lot of playoff games that they're going to have a lot of pressure on them to be able to man up. And I think that they can do that. Mike Hilton has been a tremendous player for them throughout his time here in Cincinnati. I like this group. I love this defensive unit. I think they can be a top 10 defensive unit once again heading into the year. And I love what they have to offer just in totality. The depth that they have, especially when you get late in the season, that is when you're going to want to have some guys that can step up. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be players that, you're going to need to rotate in. And they have the depth to do it across the board. The defensive line, the linebacking unit, as well as the secondary, they check those boxes for me. Now, finally, taking a look at the actual record prediction for the Bengals here, I have them going 12-5. I think there's a lot of different games that could be some coin flips in the divisional games. There always seems to be some games that are tough to predict in the AFC North, especially when the Bengals have to go on the road. It's a tough division. It really is, because you have Pittsburgh, you got Baltimore, and Cleveland. I think all of which are going to be 500 and above this upcoming season. It's a good division. It really is. Some of the tough games that I do want to highlight on here, I have Kansas City as being a tough one going on the road. San Francisco is going to be tough on the road. And I think that there's a couple of divisional games that you could drop, and maybe a game that they should win. Playing Buffalo is another tough one. So 12-5 is where I do end up having them go. It was super tough to pick this. I might even lean on the side of 13-4. But the Cincinnati Bengals are going to make a deep postseason run this year. And I think 12-5, 13-4 is kind of the range that they're going to sit in here. So if you did enjoy the content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Also, leave a like on today's video if you did enjoy the content. I had a lot of fun talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. So let's make sure that we hit that subscribe button and stay a part of the NFL community here at Utility Sports Plus. Thank you.